We like to describe our report as a carefully edited collection of U.S. news headlines, papers across the country, summarized for you in one place. We do it here every day. Here's our top story. Okay, maybe this says something about where my real interests lie, but I was compelled to read this story, the entire story in the Washington Post after seeing the headline. It says, "Ever wondered why milk can shoot out of a person's nose?" It's in the Kids Post section. The story says, every middle schooler has experienced it in the lunchroom. Someone tells a joke when somebody else is drinking milk. The person laughs so hard that milk comes out their nose. The Post story complete with diagrams of the mouth, nose, and throat to explain how this happens. To the front page of this newspaper now, a report from Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, where for the first time in 18 years, news photographers were permitted to attend a ceremony for the return of a body of an American service member. The elder President Bush put this ban on news coverage of the ceremonies in place in 1991. In Delaware, the News Journal covering the story on its front page with the headline, "Arrival of Fallen Troops at Dover, No Longer Secret." President Obama at the top of the front page of the New York Times, speaking in Prague yesterday. He's tied into two stories about nuclear weapons that lead the Times this morning. One is about the president's new approach to nuclear disarmament and the related concerns that bomb technology is increasingly available on the black market. The story next to that about the independent tracking of the North Korean rocket launch, which the North Koreans say successfully launched a satellite. Missile experts say the launch appears to have actually been an embarrassing failure, with the rocket and payload dropping into the ocean. An Associated Press story getting a lot of ink this morning is about the U.S. military's air-to-air refueling tankers. These planes are 50 years old, still in service. The replacement program, as you may know, tied up in politics. The story says the failure to replace them shows much of what's wrong with how the military manages its acquisitions. Medical news now from the New York Times. Scientists working with an experimental drug that might be able to help you erase memories from your brain. The idea, they say, is that they could make someone forget a bad habit or forget a chronic fear. Do his and hers multivitamins make a difference? The Los Angeles Times asked that question this morning. Scientists are not sure that vitamin supplements help at all, but supposing they do, there's reason to think that gender-specific cocktails are a good idea, with men and women having different dietary needs. Pills could load you up on vitamins you don't need, though. One expert says many people who are taking iron, for example, don't need to. From the movie business, it was a surprisingly strong weekend for Fast and Furious, as reported in the LA Times. The latest installment in that movie franchise did $72 million worth of business. Universal says it had identified the first week of April as a good time to launch an action movie. Looks like they were right. The Times also has a story about the success of the 3D kids movie Monsters vs. Aliens. Audiences have been enjoying this latest 3D technology. But there is another huge benefit for the movie makers. 3D films are almost impossible to pirate. A lot of follow-up coverage this morning after the shooting spree in Binghamton, New York on Friday. The New York Post, among the papers, putting pressure on police to explain why officers decided not to go in initially to try to stop the gunman. They made a decision to wait 40 minutes for the SWAT team to get ready. The Syracuse Post-Standard has several updated stories, including the horrible moments for Shirley DeLucia. She's the wounded receptionist who pretended to be dead and managed to get out alive. A cancer-stricken Farrah Fawcett was fighting for her life Sunday night in Los Angeles, reports the New York Daily News. The paper says she's slipped into unconsciousness as relatives gathered at her bedside. The Boston Herald follows Patriots quarterback Tom Brady in Costa Rica, where he was married, I guess again, to Gisele Bundchen, but a shot was reportedly fired by security people at two paparazzi. The security guys discovered the photographers and chased them when they refused to turn over their pictures. Country music superstars Rascal Flatts released a new album tomorrow. USA Today describing the band as country's unstoppable force. The album is called Unstoppable. Two more Michael Crichton novels are on the way. The New York Times has word from his publisher that Pirate Latitudes will be published November 24th, and Crichton was about a third of the way through another book at the time of his death. The publisher intends to have someone finish that book. Also in the New York Times, there is a photo of me reading my newspapers at New York One. Times writer Brian Stelter interviewed me about Pat's papers. He correctly points out that this type of news summary is effectively an acknowledgement that the day's news agenda in America still largely begins with ink on newsprint. There is some worthwhile reading in the Wall Street Journal and a column from Tom Lauricella. This is about target date retirement funds. These are supposed to be these set it and forget it funds. You might have one in your 401k. It's supposed to be matched to your specific retirement date. Some of these funds dropped 25% with the recent market downturn. Lauricella says target date retirement funds need to be fixed. Has the Republican Party found its rock star? That's the question in the Chicago Tribune. The answer is maybe. 27-year-old Aaron Schock, picked by the Huffington Post recently as the hottest freshman in Congress, John McCain's daughters called him the future of the party. He is 20 years younger than Barack Obama. Finally, from the New York Daily News under the headline, Knockout Paunch. Does the Rhodile tummy tuck serum actually work? A mother showed the results on the Rachel Ray show. Sales took off. The Daily News talked to some people who are giving it a try. The early response from them seems to be that the skin feels tighter, but a dermatologist says it may feel that way for a while. It's unlikely, he says, to have a permanent effect. We do this every day, and each morning we send out our email. It's a list of our favorite stories delivered straight to your email inbox. You can subscribe at patspapers.com. That's also where you'll find the links to all the stories I've talked about today.